Welcome to Mapline Basics. I'm Nathaniel and I get to train you today. This video is going to give you a strong foundation in all things Mapline. From building maps, adding data, customer segments and territories, you're going to learn it all. So let's jump right in. So this is what you'll see when you first log into Mapline. Over here on the left-hand sidebar, these are each libraries: datasets, views, maps, reports. This basics video, we're going to focus on datasets and maps. What is a dataset? In Mapline, that is the core of everything else. It's the hub. And when you build a view or a map or a dashboard, at the core of it is a dataset. A dataset is any set of data that you bring into Mapline. So a list of customers, a list of stores, your sales guys' locations, hospitals' addresses, anything like that. Those are all going to be brought in as datasets. So let's go ahead and bring in a dataset. So I'll click on the big orange Add New Items button in the top left and then click on New Dataset. Here we'll give this name Customers, and then I'll paste in my data right here. So let me open up my Excel sheet. Okay, so this is the data I'm going to bring into Mapline. Now, this is not a template. This is an example. So your data can have 3 columns or it can have 30 columns. It's all fine. All of it's going to work in Mapline because we're awesome. So the address data here, I've got it split out across multiple columns. You can have it all in one column. That's fine. I've even got latitude, longitude. That also works. The point is, as long as you have some type of address data, it's going to appear on the map. I'm going to just click into my data, and then I can use a little shortcut here to highlight all of my data. You can highlight it however you want, but once you've highlighted it, go ahead and copy it, and then we'll go back over to Mapline. Okay, back at Mapline, and I'm going to paste in that data and then click Next. Here, Mapline is just doing some due diligence, making sure it's correctly identifying my address columns. If it got something wrong, I could click on the dropdown and select a different column for my data, but everything looks good, so I'll click OK. Okay, so it says that Demo Customers has been added. It's in our dataset library. Right now we're in our Maps library, so let me go over to the top left. I'll click on the Datasets tab, and there it is, Demo Customers. Now, that's the most common way to bring data into Mapline, is just by copying and pasting, but we also have an API that lets you push and pull data automatically between Mapline and another system. Let's go ahead and click on that dataset. Okay, so this is my dataset in Mapline. You'll see it has all the same data as my Excel sheet. So I've got the status column, sales, site name, it's all in here. All of this data is also editable, so I can click onto a cell and let's change this customer from active to inactive, IVE, that's how you spell inactive. Perfect, right? That's one way of keeping this data updated. The most common way though is coming up to options at the top and then clicking replace. This would let me swap out this data for completely new data. It's going to delete all of this that we're seeing and swap it with the new stuff. So if I've got a new list of customers, I could bring that in, easy peasy. Also, if you have the API, again, that's another way of keeping this data updated. Enough about the data though, let's build a map. As a shortcut, I'm going to click on the Mapline logo in the top left corner. This is always going to be in the top left corner. So if you ever need to move between maps or data sets, you can always click on this logo to get around. So I'm going to come down to New Map, and we're going to call a new map called Demo My Map. Okay, this is a new map. It's in my Maps library. Now you'll notice this is a blank map. Maps and datasets in Mapline are separate. If you add a dataset, it's just a dataset. And if you create a map, it's just a blank map. It's not until you connect these that anything, magical happens. What that lets you do is you can have one dataset on 5 different maps, or you can have one map have 5 different datasets. You can mix and match them as you see fit. The data that I have today is only in the US. So with my mouse, I'm going to scroll the wheel to get into the US. You could also use the plus and minus sign in the top right corner to zoom in. We'll get it to set up like that. Perfect. Okay. Let's bring in that data. So I'm going to go over to the top left corner and click on Add and then Pins. Now, you'll see this From Spreadsheet option. That's a bit of a shortcut. That would let me copy and paste directly onto the map. And Mapline will simultaneously take that data and create a data set. I went the long way, right? I added something to my dataset library first, but I want everyone to understand that maps and datasets are separate. So with that in mind, I'm going to click on From Dataset Library. And let's bring in our customer layer. I'm also going to bring in a second layer that we'll use in the training today. So I'll check the second box here for technicians. And then I'll come down to the orange OK and click that. All right, perfect. Look at these pins. So I've got customers are sort of these lime green pins, and then my technicians are purple pins. Any one of these pins can be clicked on and you can see all of the data about that location. Each location is a row from my data set. So my original data set, each row is now reflected as a pin on my map. Okay, first things first, the color purple scares me, so we're going to change the colors. My technician layer here, I'm going to come over to the 3-bar menu, click on that, and up at the very top I have a style option. This will let me change the look and feel of these pins. So I'll go ahead and click on that. I can change the shape of my technician pins, so we'll make them a little meeple. We'll change the color to something calmer, like blue, lovely. And the interior, so this little white dot, I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, now you may notice in my preview and also on the map, a lot of my pins had little numbers next to them. Mapline is clustering them, this option down at the bottom. Rather than loading 30 pins all right on top of each other, Mapline just puts one pin and then a big number 30. It's just a style thing. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to turn off the cluster for my customer layer as well. If you're working with a couple hundred or a couple thousand pins, feel free to turn off the cluster. But if you're working with 20,000, 80,000, 100,000 pins, I recommend keeping it on. It'll keep your maps nice and clean. It'll keep your browsers performing nice and quick for you. Overall, it just looks nice. Okay, so my map's looking pretty good. I got some nice oranges and blues. The marketing team would be proud of my color choices. Let's keep going down that 3-bar menu. So I'll come over to the left to customers, click on that menu. All of these options allow me to tweak, edit, change, add to, anything about this layer. So we've already changed the style for customers. So let's do the next one, which is a label. So the label options, you can choose when that label appears, what data appears inside that label, and then what that label should look like. You can come up with some wild combinations between text, borders, and backgrounds, so have at, sky's the limit. And when you're all done, you can click the orange button in the bottom right corner. And there we go. So now when I hover over a pin, it says the site name. Pretty cool. Next up, let's open up that menu and let's talk about filters and segments. These two are extremely powerful capabilities. Not only are they used widely across our customer base, but they're also widely used within Mapline. If you're building a route, you're going to be doing filters. If you've got a metric on a dashboard, you'll be using segments. Maybe a lot of that was gobbledygook, but the point is filters and segments are important to understand. So let's dive into them one by one. First, we'll start with filters. For a map, a filter allows you to choose which pins appear or don't appear. In this case, each one of my customers has a status. They're either active or inactive. That's a column in my data. Let's filter on that column. So I'm going to select that column here for the top option, and I'll come down to status, select that. Equals is the default, works great in this case. And then the value, I guess I could type inactive, but I don't want to fat finger it, so I'm going to use the drop down here. And under values, we'll have just inactive checked. Looks good. I'll come down to the bottom right corner, check the apply box. Okay, this looks good. So only my customers with the status of inactive are going to appear. Let's click the apply button. Okay, so immediately less pins on the map. Each one of these guaranteed is an inactive customer. If I click on one, scroll down to status, inactive, there we go. Let's go back into that filter. Let's talk through this a little bit more. The Mapline filter can be extremely powerful. You'll see I've got a plus sign down here, so I can add multiple filters to this same box here. Equals is the default, but if I click on equals, you can see we've got text filters, so contains, does not contains, equals, starts with, number filters, greater than, less than, even date filters. And I can base that off of today's date minus 10 days, whatever. You can get some pretty powerful filters here. So let me give an example. Maybe I want to see my customers where their status is inactive and the last visit date was over 10 days ago and their sales is over $1,000. That's pretty cool, right? So now my map is only showing inactive, unvisited, highly valuable customers. That allows me to then see those all on a map and create a route or visit them, you name it. Pretty cool. Next up is segments. Segments, like filters, are widely used across Mapline, so it's important to understand how this works. A segment is going to split out your data based on the unique values of a column. So my active customers are going to be one group, my inactive customers are going to be another group, and they can each have their own colored pins and whatnot on the map. So pretty cool. Let's dive into it. Make sure you understand how to use it. Here I can click on the plus sign to add a new segment. I'm going to scroll down and find my status column in my data, and I'll go ahead and hit the blue checkbox to apply, and then the orange OK button. Okay, there we go. I got green pins and red pins. One of these is active, and the others are my inactive customers. I don't know which is which though. So let's come over to the left-hand sidebar, and we'll click on this blue arrow. When I hover over it, it turns orange. Again, before when I click on that, it lists everything inside the folder. But now that I have a segment applied, it just lists my two segments. So here I can see my active pins are green, and my inactive pins are red. You'll notice that each one of these segments also has their own 3-bar menu, a little preview folder, a checkbox that you can hide and show the layer, all that good stuff. I'll give you a pro tip, a little secret from me to you. Each one of these folders, whether it's a segment folder or just a main folder, you can click on the folder to instantly open up the style guide. So maybe I want my active pins to have a little star in them or something. Perfect, looks good. Segments work really well for any type of qualitative or category type data. So we just did customer status, but think customer type, customer sales tier, name of the assigned rep, the division or region that a location belongs to. I've even seen dates, so date of last visit or month last visited, renewal year, all of that type of information works really well for segments. Okay, back to base map. Let's go back to that menu. And now we're gonna go to coverage. Coverage is going to put a radius circle around every single pin in your data set. So in this case, I've got the technicians menu open. This will put a coverage circle around every technician. So let's go ahead and click on that. Let's do a radius of say 35 miles, and we'll pick a black border, and then I'll go ahead and click the orange OK button. Boom, we got coverage circles. You can't forget about coverage circles. Each one of these circles shows the outline of which customers fall inside or outside, but I can also click on the circle itself, and that's going to give me a list that I can choose to download if I want back to Excel. Okay, back to base map in our menu. Next on the list is the heat map. Now this is kind of similar to coverage circles in the sense that it's going to put a radius circle around every single one of your pins, but for the heat map, these circles are going to bleed together and create unique colors to show density or amount of sales, that type of data. Let's go ahead and click on heat map. Here I'll set the size of that circle to the same, 35 miles, and we'll keep it to location density. I'll go ahead and click the orange OK button. Okay, there we go. You can see that each pin has a circle around it, and where a bunch of pins are close together, it's creating sort of a heatness or a red high density. This is going to create a heat map that's similar to a weather station, rainfall or temperature type heat map. On the topic of using colors to represent values, you can also use dynamic pin styling. Here, each one of these pins is colored based on the total sales. So I can see high sales are green pins, low sales are red pins. You can access dynamic pin styling under the style options. Under the style options for color, there's static and also dynamic. And that's what I'm using here. We also have territory dynamic styling. Here, each state is colored based on the total sales. So a state with low sales is red and a state with high sales is green. This also can be accessed using the dynamic styling options for territories. So you'll want to think through whether to use heat maps, dynamic pin styling, or dynamic territory styling to best fit your needs. Okay, back to base map. I want to take some time right now and mention routing. You can build routes from a layer, so in this menu option right here, but also from the add button in the top left corner by coming down to routes. Both of these are going to give you the ability to draw a shape on the map and then route to all of the locations inside of that shape. This is just a quick and easy way to build a route. Again, there's more advanced ways to build routes within Mapline, even using your data and trip times and things like that. That's its own training. The final item that I want to talk through in this menu is the View Data option. Let me go ahead and click on that. View Data pulls up your data set in a nice little window where you can edit or change or just look at your data. Now this is a shortcut to your data set, but this is your data set. So if I come in here and I start editing information, that's editing my underlying data set. Same thing if I click on a pin and choose to edit the pin data. I'm editing the underlying data set. It's a really neat trick and super cool because it's keeping everything centralized, but you'll want to be mindful of that. That covers everything about pins. So customer segments, changing pin styles, radius circles, all of that. Now we're going to move over to territories. If I come over to the top left corner and click on Add, you'll see I've got shapes and territories. Honestly, I don't know why we split these. I think it's just because shapes are more geometries like circles and rectangles. And then territories, we have draw custom and from our repository. They're all the same. Whether you add a circle to a map, a square, whether you draw your own custom shape or add government boundaries like US states, they're all going to allow for the same base capabilities. So let's start by adding a circle. If I come over to shape and then circle, let me go ahead and zoom into Denver here. This lets me draw a circle directly onto the map. So we're going to click on our technician alley. I'm going to move my mouse, and you'll see next to my mouse it says the radius. Let's set that to 25. Click again, done. Okay, and I'll click the big orange done button, just like that. So you'll notice in my left-hand sidebar, I now have 3 layers. I have customers, technicians, and now a circles folder. So anytime I use that add button, it's going to create a new layer. This circles folder has similar capabilities as my pin folders. I've got a 3-bar menu. I've got a little preview icon. I've got a checkbox that lets me hide or show the layer. I even have a little arrow on the far left that when I click on it, expands that folder and I can see all the shapes inside of it. Any shape on a map, whether it's a circle, a custom shape that you've created, or a state boundary or county, all of them can be clicked on to then see the name of the shape, and you get some options down at the bottom. These options allow you to download all the data inside the shape or see a report of all the locations inside the shape. So if I click on report, this lists all of my customers inside my 25-mile radius circle that I've drawn. This allows me to easily update all of these. Maybe these should all be assigned to Michelle, right? So I'll take Michelle, copy and paste that all the way down. So these are all assigned to Michelle. They're inside the circle. This third option is dynamic data. We're going to touch on that a little bit later, but it also is its own separate training. But for now, let's dive into the other types of territories and shapes we can add to the map. I'm going to come back up to the add in the top left corner, come down to territories, and here I'll select draw custom. This lets me draw unique shapes directly onto the map. So if I zoom over to Chicago, every time I click, that's going to be a corner of my shape. So click, 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 right? Every time I click, it creates a corner of my shape. And then I click on the first circle to close the loop. Okay, there we go. So there's one shape. I can keep going. I can draw as many of these as I want. So we'll do a northern and maybe a mid. Okay, perfect. When I'm all done, I'll click the big orange done button. And again, you'll see left-hand sidebar, I now have 4 layers: customers, technicians, circles, and territories. Typically, when people are creating their own territories, they may want to add additional territories to a folder that already exists. Well, if you go up to the add button, that's going to create a whole new folder. But if I want to add to a folder that already exists, I can hover over territories folder, click on that 3-bar menu, and then down towards the bottom, you'll see add territories. Now that I have this open, you'll also see some similar options for our pin layers. You've got style, rename, duplicate, filter, segment, right? Similar capabilities. The third type of territory that I'll talk through is a territory from Mapline's repository. It's a big fancy word. It just means we have hundreds, if not thousands of different territories that you can add to your map. So if I come to add territories and from Mapline's repository, we can see the list. If I click on select territories at the top, here's our massive list. If you want Afghanistan provinces on your map, you got them, right? You can scroll through this list and see all the different options that we have. In this case, I know what I'm looking for, so I'm going to go ahead and use the search box at the top and type in US states. For fill color, we've got random, uniform, and heat map, which we talked about earlier. I'm going to go ahead and stick with uniform for now. I can always change it later. So I'll select uniform, and let's make them all a nice light blue and click the orange OK. Okay, there we go. So each state is now on the map. Got this nice light blue. Now, one of the things I'll call out is if you have multiple layers of territories on your map, you may run into a layer order issue. Let me go ahead and zoom into Chicago and show you what I mean. Right now, Illinois is actually on top of my 2 Chicago territories. So if I try and click on one of my territories, it just says Illinois. The reason for that is Mapline's going to follow the order of your left-hand sidebar. So I come over to the left here, US states is on top. If I hover over the US states, I've got these 2x3 dots on the far left side. I can actually click and drag and move this layer to be beneath my territories folder. Okay, there we go. So now when I click on the shape, it says territory 2. So be mindful of that if you've got multiple folders on the same map. Now here I am going to take a second and talk about dynamic data. Again, this is its own training, but I want to lightly touch on it here because it's used a lot with territories. This third option, dynamic data, allows me to add data about the territory itself, so that when I click on a territory, rather than just saying the name, it also has some additional data. Maybe sum of sales, name of the assigned rep, total count of active customers, population of males between ages 18 and 30. All of that about this territory and all the other territories in the same folder. That's the power of dynamic data. You can also use dynamic data between datasets. So if I come over to the left and click on the menu for technicians, you'll see I've got an add dynamic data option. This would let me pull in, say, the distance between technicians and customers, maybe the name of the nearest technician for every single one of my customers, or maybe the count of customers within 5 miles of every one of my technicians. I can also compare dataset data with territory data. Maybe I want to pull in the name of the territory that every single one of my customers is inside. That can be really powerful. Okay, let's get back to the full US here. Like I said before, any shape or territory, same thing, you can click on and see the data. You can also right-click on any shape or territory, and this will let you choose the style, edit the territory, rename it, anything like that. This also gives you the option to merge territories. So I can take 5 or 6 states, merge them together to create a unique sales territory. The merge option can also be found under the territory folder. So if I come over to the left-hand sidebar and click on Territories folder, I can see there's a Merge Territories option down at the bottom. Okay, so I now have a beautiful map. I want to share this with the marketing team, let them know that I did a great job building this. So I'm going to come over to Options in the top left corner and then Share. You have 2 ways to share within Mapline. The first is private sharing. You can privately share with any other licensed user on your account. And when you do, you can choose to give them view-only access or edit access. So for example, let's say I share this map with someone and I give them edit permissions for the map. So they can go in, create heat maps, draw shapes, apply segments, all that good stuff. But the data set I share view only. What that means is even though they can edit the map, they can't edit the underlying data. It's a pretty common use case. The other way to share maps and other items within Mapline is through public sharing. Public sharing is going to create a URL link for your map, and then anyone with access to that link can access your map. That'll let them zoom in, zoom out, click on pins, see everything. It's interactive. They just can't edit the information. So you'll want to be mindful of what type of information you put on a map because it is public and no longer secure. The final item that I want to call out under the Options button is the settings. Under settings, you can choose how the map looks, what the automatic zoom level should be. So by default, Mapline's going to open up to the whole world every time. I don't need that. My data's in the US. So under default position, I can set it to be most recent or this current zoom level I have right now. I recommend playing around with this and finding what best suits you. And that's it. Now we've covered a lot today, so I do want to call out this help tab in the top right corner if you ever have any questions. We've got some amazing training articles, but also this contact us. You can schedule something, send us an email or give us a ring, but I really want to call out this chat. This is live chat. There's no bots. You don't have to guess the right word to find a human. They're Mapline employees. They know their stuff. So if you ever have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now, if you really want to be an office superhero, I highly recommend checking out training on dashboards, forms, routing, and especially dynamic data. That's a powerhouse. But for this video, that's it. Thank you so much for joining me today, and good luck with Mapline.